So yesterday was pretty bleak in terms of the blocked U.S. intelligence and what that meant on the battlefield and the chaos that ensued, and it was reflected in the thumbnails. Today, we have a little of that, but there's a lot of really good news as well. Hello, my friends. It is Sunday, March 9th, 2025. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide you with context in the war in Ukraine. So we're going to start here with 1,180 Russians off the battlefield, 6 tanks, 14 armored fighting vehicles, 58 artillery systems, 142 vehicles and fuel tanks. There's been this trend now for about 2 weeks, maybe longer, 3 weeks, of lower numbers on the battlefield coupled with higher vehicles and fuel tanks numbers. And a lot of that's attributable to drones. Okay, so first week of March is over now. We had about just under 1,200 casualties as opposed to 1,250 or so casualties as a daily average in the previous month. Ukraine's Air Force reported Shahed drone attack last night. Out of 119 Shaheds shot, 73 were shot down. So 119 is a dropping number. Believe it or not, 119 is a lower number than what it's been in previous days. Okay, throughout this week, Russia has carried out hundreds of attacks against our people using various types of weapons, around 1,200 guided aerial bombs, 870 attack drones, over 80 missiles of different types. And you might be thinking at this point, hey, Gerdes, I thought you were talking about good news. We're almost there. Just a few more things, and then everything else will be pretty much good news. The Ukrainians have lost the ability to detect the approach of Russian bombers and other weapons or warplanes as they take off inside Russia. As a result, Ukraine has less time to warn civilians and military personnel about the risk of approaching airstrike or missiles. But what we saw over the last couple of days is that it was all Shaheds and there were fewer in number. So yesterday was less than the day before, which was less than the day before, which was a massive attack. So it's moving the right direction, although that doesn't mean that anything's going to continue that way. Russian attack on critical infrastructure object in Zaporizhzhia region. There might be disruptions of gas and heating for residents. Local authorities reported this yesterday. Russia just keeps going after civilians. That's correct. And then this is, I think, the last piece of not so great news. Russia deploys elite Rubicon drone unit. I talked about them yesterday. If you are not familiar with the Rubicon drone unit, you really must go back to the daily brief yesterday where I was talking about that. Andrew Perpetua is explaining it. And the Russia deploys the elite Rubicon drone unit and fresh North Koreans to cut Ukrainians' supply lines in Kursk. Now, nothing has crumbled. They've secured or held the line. These guys are no joke. These Rubicon drone units. Russian drone operators are overwhelming Ukrainian defenses with multi-angle strikes using rapid frequency shifts to evade jamming. So they're each trying to figure out how to cripple the other, and they're doing this in real time. And it's tricky to keep up. Okay. Ukraine, now this is what Ukraine is doing, and the rest of everything that we're going to say is going to be all positive news. So that was all the bad news right up front. Ukraine drones attacked the Novolipsik metallurgical plant and the Burevestnik oil refinery in Chasiv Yar, Russia. Explosions were also heard in Kornevo in the Kursk region, near a distillery in Voronezh, and a refinery in Ksovo and Ryazan. So there's a lot of Ukrainian attacks last night in Russia. Ukrainian drones struck in Voronezh, Lipsk, Rostov, Koronev, Kursk region overnight. Precision strikes hit Novolipsik steel plant. This is saying somewhat of the same thing. Ryazan oil refinery was also targeted, but the governor claims that everything is under control. Okay, you can never believe when they put out those official pronouncements about how everything is under control, because they always say that regardless of whether it is or not. For the first time, drones have also reached the Chuvash Republic. A drone fell on the territory of an oil refinery in Chasiv Yar, 970 kilometers inland from the Russian state border. Now, I've never heard of this place, so I had to look it up, and I'm learning a great deal about Russian geography in the process. Here is Ukraine on the map. Here's Moscow. This city is right over here. Chasiv Yar is near Kazan. It's a long, long ways from the front line. In the Pokrovsk direction, Frontline analysis now. In the Pokrovsk direction, 25 assaults. Now that number is correlated with the lower number of casualties, the fewer number of assaults and fewer number of casualties, and we've seen that as a trend. Ukrainian forces advanced near Toretsk and Pokrovsk. Russian forces also advanced in Kursk Oblast and near Toretsk and Pokrovsk. So they're advancing and on different parts of where the battlefield is. So it's not like a contradictory. It's just that they're doing it on different parts. Ukraine denied claims of mass Russian breakthrough in Sumy Oblast. Now, there was some kind of interaction. While no large-scale incursion was recorded, Russian small sabotage groups continued attempts to infiltrate Ukrainian territory, seeking to expand combat zones. It didn't turn out to be some kind of large-scale invasion, just little raids over the border, as far as I can understand. Partisans, that is Russian partisans in Russia working on behalf of Ukraine or working at least against Russia, set fire to the door of the FSB headquarters in Moscow. Ukrainians recapture parts of strategic Chasiv Yar, which is really good news, as new French VEB armor doubles combat power. Ukraine has secured fire superiority in Chasiv Yar, forcing Russian units into retreat and weakening their push toward Konstantinivka. That's also very good news. Now, this was kind of unexpected that it would actually happen like this. Ukraine halted the Russian advance near Pokrovsk as Moscow's forces depleted resources. I thought, let me say it like this. I thought that Pokrovsk was going to be over with by August, maybe September. And I was like praying for winter to come so that we could slow things down. But it turns out, they kind of did it to themselves. However, artillery, aviation, and drone strikes continue 24/7 in Donetsk. So Pokrovsk is reasonably safe from being overrun, but not from drone strikes. And drones are just huge in this war. Russian troops tried to infiltrate the Sutsa sector by crawling through the Brotherhood pipeline. This is up in Kursk. Now, the pipeline is of 1,420 millimeters. I don't think in millimeters, but 56 inches, I understand. 56 inches in diameter. So they had to get through this tight pipeline. According to Ukrainian sources, around 100 Russian soldiers were involved in this attempt, of which 80% were destroyed. Now, here's a little bit more about what happened. After the first unverified reports that Russians used a defunct gas pipeline to infiltrate Sutsa and were subsequently crushed by Ukrainian forces, Z-bloggers are now openly criticizing the operation as another failure of the Russian military. Z-bloggers don't say everything is going according to plan. They don't talk like that. They try to see what's really going on, and they sincerely want Russia to win, but they're more honest in many ways. Reportedly, the Russian command claimed that all preparations for the operation were made, including logistics, ventilation, and communications. In reality, none of this was done. I'm sure it was like, hey, you 100 guys over here, go into that pipeline and come out the other side and go kill the Ukrainians. Rather than, hey, let's make sure that you have the right radios, let's make sure you have the gas mask so that you'll be able to survive. Some Russian soldiers allegedly suffocated to death or got methane poisoning from the residual gas in the pipe. They reportedly spent up to 4 days inside. And then when they came out on the other side, of course, they were wiped out. Okay. Trump claims Ukraine is collapsing, no cards, but the data tells another story. Now, this is an article in The Atlantic, and Timothy Milanovov is explaining those main points. I'll add, if you judge by the territory gain, Russia's winning, but by lives lost for that territory, the results are disastrous. So first, Russia's weakness includes economic struggles, 20% interest rates and inflation, and with military spending consuming 40% of public spending amid declining oil revenue, which is now $20 below where it needs to be in order to meet budget. And lots of oil is sitting off on the coast of India, and Russia just can't get in. Russian casualties increased from 500 a day in December of 2022 to over 1,500 a day by December of 2024, totaling nearly 430,000 killed and wounded in 2024 alone. 48,240 losses in January of 2025. So the losses are just staggering. It's almost hard to wrap your mind around the losses that the Russians have been taking. Equipment losses have been 1,400 tanks, 3,700 fighting vehicles in 2024, which exceeded production capacity, forcing Russia to restore obsolete Soviet-era vehicles and even using cars. I've seen people on scooters, motorcycles, bicycles, you name it, trying to attack on a scooter or something. Okay, Ukraine's domestic production has reached 1.2 million UAVs in 2024, with targets of 4 million this year. I think they'll probably hit that. UAVs now cost, listen to this, UAVs now cost 70% of Russian losses. So it used to be that artillery was the king of battle. I don't know what you call this, emperor of battle. It's something beyond the king of battle. Drones are really mighty. It's hard to underestimate what drones can do, or overestimate what drones can do. It's so easy to look at these little things and think, wow, they can't really do much, but it's just, wow. Okay, European allies with GDP 10 times Russia's can significantly help Ukraine despite not replacing all U.S. capabilities. European and U.S. aid accounts for 30% each, while Ukraine produces 40% of its military resources. And again, their GDP dwarfs Russia. All they have to have is the will, which Russia really has in spades. Okay, so that's a big picture snapshot of where we are. Russians publish a video that allegedly shows Ukrainian naval drone launching smaller naval drones to strike at a gas platform in the Black Sea, and Russians have captured. Again, the creativity, the ingenuity here is just remarkable. Here's another example of that. Ukrainian developers introduced, I don't know how to pronounce that, Hiladach, a new aiming system allowing soldiers to fire accurately while staying behind cover. This includes a camera mounted on a weapon, monocular display, and control module. So this guy he's holding his weapon over that thing, but he's shooting behind cover and can stay safe in that process. Okay. Last couple things. Darth Putin says tonight Ukraine will continue to prove that it does not want peace by being bombed. Okay, and I'm going to leave you with a story. If you don't want to feel your emotions, you can exit now. If you do want to be aware of what it's really like, then listen on. So every day in Ukraine, this is Euromaidan Press reporting this, every day in Ukraine, the piercing wail of air raid sirens cut through the air near a cafe somewhere in Ukraine. Outside, a girl no older than 5 stands beside a stroller, gently rocking it to soothe the infant. As a siren grows louder, fear overtakes her. She begins to sob uncontrollably. Moments later, her mother rushes out of the cafe, clutching a handful of croissants. "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" the mother asks. "The sirens, and you weren't here," the girl says. Her mother kneels down and speaks gently. "But you know I went to buy you a croissant." The child takes the pastry, nibbling on it as tears subside. Then in a trembling voice, she looks up and says, "I'm just afraid to die without you." That's the reality in Ukraine. Thank you, my friends, for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.